Hello, and welcome to the Week 5 progress report of the Deneb roguelike game project. This week, my task was to focus on creating the heads-up display, or HUD for short, create a basic inventory UI, and create basic items used by the character. For my first task, I began to build the HUD for the player. I researched several top-down dungeon crawler games. In this game, I liked the simple Zelda-like layout of the hearts and simplicity in item display, but thought it was too cluttered in the corner of the screen. This game had an awesome layout for weapons, but the other elements cluttered the screen too much as well. This HUD was too cluttered as well and did not use space efficiently. I had to search for later games in the series for something I liked. Though this game was in 3D, I liked how the images were spaced out and not bunched up together. I especially liked how the inventory for items were nested under the icon itself. I then mocked up what I liked in Windows Paint. I forwarded this to my group via Slack for feedback, and they both gave me the okay to move forward. I started by creating a blank canvas, Unity's base UI tool, and built each system up from there. The gray box was created in Piscale and imported as a sprite. The weapon images, words, and icons were all childed to this box to make positioning and centering of them easier. Ammo was added to the corner like in Ocarina of Time. A placeholder image was added until weapons were created later. This similar method was used for the key and coin. Note that these icons were provided by Zach. The magic bar consisted of 3 colored images. To give the bar the impression of it emptying or filling, it was anchored to the base object and then scaled in the positive X direction. To carry the HUD across levels, the canvas prefab was put inside the game controller. Since the game controller would be handling the flow of the game, this placement made logical sense. However, before changing the UI, I needed to create the variables to change in the player class. Many simple getters and setters like these were created which modified those values. To access the objects in script, I needed to get a reference to them. Utilizing generic functions, I could pass the type of object I wanted, like text or sprites, and search the canvas hierarchy for what I needed. With this information, I saved references to all UI variables needing to change. Then, when the player class called the function to change one of these variables, it would also call the UI update function, which would dynamically change the text at the same time. Lastly, I needed to create the player's health UI. At first I thought dynamically loaded images from memory and appending on the screen would be the way to go, but this proved too time-consuming and difficult to undertake. As a backup idea, I created images with placeholder text on the HUD and looped over those images using their numbered names to set the heart image in each one. Depending on the health and max health of the player, an if-else structure determined which heart to show, full, half, or empty. Then a switch statement would pick the correct heart and set the image on screen. Next, I needed to create the base item object. Each item only ran a single function before destroying itself, so I decided they should share the same class. To differentiate between these items, I created an enum and made it public so the user would select which type of item it was when implementing Unity. To start, the base object would save the player and game manager objects as references and check if the character collided with it. Depending on the enum value chosen, each power-up would run a different function. These would call back to the player and change the values in UI accordingly. Finally, the sprites were created with the help of Zach's dungeon assets. Lastly, I needed to create the pause menu inventory screen. Since our inventory is mainly cosmetic, the Binding of Isaac's menu seemed to fit well. I forwarded this image to the group on Slack and they agreed. To start, I had to pause the game. Unity handles this well by letting the user set the timescale to 0, which freezes everything in the level. I then created another simple UI layered on top of the original HUD. Its visibility could be toggled in code when the player paused the game to make the menu pop up. To make the inventory items pop up in the menu, this was handled similarly to the heart images described earlier. However, instead of using a for loop, the item was marked as a passive upgrade. I would then set its image to a function created in the game controller. Note that after the object is collected, it removes itself from the world. This function looks at the images similarly to the hearts. However, it saves how many hearts it generates so it doesn't only draw over the same image. This inventory currently holds 12 items. Thank you. This concludes my work for this week.